In at number 10, we have the gacha. But, you know, this creature is an extremely useful one, but I can very much acknowledge that it is a very ugly one. And albeit it isn't the ugliest creature out there, and gacha claws doesn't look too bad, I still think, especially with these colours, it's not just the colours, but mainly the humanoid teeth. Just something doesn't really sit right with me with this creature, and it kind of makes me think, looks a bit off. I don't really want to look at it any longer, and it kind of looks a bit like vomit on its back, you could say, like with all the stones and that. But, you know, still an extremely useful creature, and I'm not saying that any of these creatures are not useful because of their appearance. Most of them are actually insects, although I don't have a phobia of insects. It's just still, they generally look kind of uglier. But either way, let's continue on with the list. Next up, we have the Oviraptor, and this is just one of those tames where it's like, you know, again, with its face, I don't really know what's going on there. Like, what is coming out of this thing's face on its head? It doesn't really make sense. And this creature really isn't particularly useful as well. Yes, it can promote more egg laying, but I don't really see a use in this creature, and I don't think it looks particularly appealing either, which is obviously why it's on the list. But, you know, it doesn't look like the ugliest thing in the world. You could definitely go uglier. Now, we've got the galley, and I'm sorry, Syntac lovers out there, or just Syntac in general, people who love these things, and I'm not saying they're not useful. Again, they do have somewhat of a use, being ridiculously fast, so they're kind of decent for traveling around the map, but in my opinion, there are some creatures which do far better at this job, like an RG, albeit not as fast, a much better creature for travelling around, because it also flies. But if you want something on the ground, a Baryonyx will do you great justice, and a Raptor is pretty good as well. You don't really need this creature, and it feels like, again, there is something wrong with this thing's face. Like, I don't know what it is. It looks oddly too humanoid for a dinosaur, and the proportions seem a bit off as well, but that kind of is how this creature works, so, you know, I get it, an ish. Also, its saddle is a little bit, like, I don't know, with the two metal bits. It looks like you're being, like, harnessed into a roller coaster or something, and it doesn't look particularly fun to ride on this thing. And in my opinion, I don't really enjoy the galley that much. I know, Syntac, I'm sorry about that, or just galley lovers in general. That might be a little bit of a hard one to swallow, because there's not really use to this creature. It doesn't really have that much health. I can acknowledge that maybe you would use it for travel, but considering its bad health and bad damage, it's not really worth it. You can easily kill these things literally just by shooting trank darts into them instead of trank arrows, and I can't spend time with these creatures. In at number 7, we got the Bulldog, and I'm sorry, okay, yes, this is definitely kind of a cute creature as well. It has an ugly side to it. I'm not going to be overly harsh to it and just chuck it right down on the list, right in like the number 1, number 2 spot or something. But the Shinehorn looks so much better than this thing. Like, the Shinehorn is a legitimately fully cute creature, whereas this, you can consider it as cute. It kind of goes with the Noglin. I'll put the Noglin here as well. Noglin and Bulldog in at the number 7 spot, because they're kind of cute, but they're also, like, really creepy and ugly, but it does match the theme of Operation, doesn't it? Just creepy, ugly variants of cute things. Next up, we've got the Angler, and this actually does have a pretty decent use, being used to gather silica pearls pretty nicely, but apart from that, it doesn't really have anything. At least it's not like the Lipluridon though, which is the most useless sea creature out there. This one actually does have quite a nice use, and it does have a little bit of nostalgia with me, because it was Squid's last kind of like OG Ark video. I think it was like episode 50 or 50 something, and they tamed the Angler. Also, it always surprises me when I rise a creature up to the surface and then the colour changes. I don't know what it is. I know it hasn't done it yet. The B-Ron might do it. I'm not sure if I actually did it in this one. I usually do it with creatures though. It's weird how much Ark water changes the colour of a creature. It just kind of makes them all look like the same colour. Either way, you can probably tell why this creature looks quite ugly. It's got an overly large mouth and really big teeth, and anglerfish are notoriously just kind of scary. Like, you just think of that thing in the deep sea and you're like, I don't really want to go there, do I? And at number 6, we have the Arthropleura, and this thing has a lot of legs, and some people can't cope with a lot of legs. I'm not one of those people, but for me it's that face. Like, it doesn't match the colour of the whole rest of the creature. Like, I like the purpley, greeny, goldiness, if there's even really any gold in there. That might just be the the reflection for me, or just something to do with the sand. Don't even know if Ark really does stuff like that. ASA probably does. Either way, its face doesn't sit right with me. It looks like someone's taken a loaf of bread and just taken the crust off and then just stuck eyes and claws on it. And also the way it moves is kind of unappealing as well. Like I'm trying to imagine the texture of this creature, and it's nothing good at all. Like, what is wrong with this thing? I don't know, but at least it can destroy tech things with its spit, and no, actually you can use your normal attack as well, but it destroys armor with that. I don't want to know what's in that. Does anyone actually know what's in Arthropoda spit to make it like that good at destroying things? Next up we have the Rhinognatha, and this creature is still very mysterious and kind of creepy to me, although I've tamed it quite a lot of times and I've used it quite a lot on both the island and the Lost Island, actually mainly on ASA, considering how much they spawn everywhere. It's insane. But if you do want to know the spawn locations, they are on screen right now. But if you want a more broad description, either way, any swamp biome on Lost Island or the island, you'll find it. Doesn't matter if it's ASA or not, but any other map, no. And on normal Ark, they're really rare, but that kind of makes them somehow more creepy. But this isn't a creepy creatures list, this is an ugly creatures list, and it looks like it wants to rip my face off, really, and I really don't like its eye colour. It just doesn't sit right with me. It feels like normal eyes. Actually, maybe that would be even creepier and uglier. Either way, not a fan of its eyes. Not really a fan of its general body shape as well. It really looks like it wants to kill me, but like it's not like a nice looking creature. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. Either way, if you did want to know how to tame one, because their tame method is actually quite complicated, so I just chuck it in. Get a pheromone gland for a male, get these resources on screen, tame yourself a Bronto. There are other creatures which work, but the Bronto is the best one to use. Then you'll want to get a net projectile or just a general trap to trap this thing. The net projectile is so much easier to use. And then just get its health to as low as you can. As low as you can. Doesn't matter. Just get it as low as you can. Doesn't matter how you get there, but you preferably got to do it quite quick. At least the net projectile does give you a minute. With the trap, you can kind of take as long as you want, really, but that's on your own accord, really, how long it takes for this trap. Net projectile, under a minute to do it, and I've got higher than 150 like levels. It goes up to 1,500 for me, so it shouldn't take more than a minute to get its health right down to as low as you can. Then feed that pheromone gland to your Bronto or equivalent other creature. If you need to damage it a little bit more as well, you can always, because its health goes up really fast. Use the magnifying glass or some spyglass, then it will imprint your creature. That's when those resources are needed for 100% effectiveness. Not really necessary in my opinion. And then your creature will die, so don't choose a special one and you get a Rhinognatha baby. In at number 3 we have the Bloodstalker. And like most people have arachnophobia, which is why I've kind of put this in this. Again, not a creepy creatures list, but most people think spiders look generally ugly, and with its 8 not glowing red but still red eyes and its tendrils of whatever that sprawls out of its body, it's not a very appealing looking creature. Like, if you wanted to find a really like cute or pretty looking animal, you probably wouldn't go for this. Like, I like its intricate design, and if you're running Ark at a high resolution, like, it kind of looks pleasing in terms of the shape of it and how crisp it looks, but that's just high resolution looks pleasing, really. 1440p is just a nice resolution. I know that I release these videos in 1080p, but this was recorded in 1440. I just put it down to 1080, so you probably can't tell, but for me at least, I know it's 1440 and it looks nice to me. Opinions on resolution, everyone. 1080p or 1440p? What do you think? I'm more of a 1440p guy myself, and considering getting a 3090 soon, yeah. I'm not a 4K person. I have a 1080p monitor. I use DSR. Dynamic super resolution. Either way, back to talking about this thing. Generally people think spiders are ugly. There's your rationale, but they are actually a really useful creature. Traveling around, like you can probably see there, you kind of get to be Spider-Man, which is nice. An ugly version of Spider-Man that deals a lot of damage and can get you hexagons if you do the Bog Rush missions on Genesis Part 1, which I've done on Alpha. I've done it. That's how you know you're a good Bloodstalker flyer, if you've done that race mission on Alpha. In at number 2, we've got the Aranio, and you can probably just tell by this dossier that its mouth, no, and like the placement of its eyes as well, and it's got like hairy legs, and it looks pretty disgusting. in all fairness. That's what I can say about this creature, and it has like no use, and that attack and the way the web comes out of it, it's all quite disgusting looking, as it probably is meant to be, and it's a very ugly looking creature. No matter what resolution you're running at, you probably want to run at a lower resolution to just hide the detail of this thing, and it's like completely useless. Don't tame this thing. It's a passive tame for some reason. Why does it need to be a passive tame? And it's got no use. Don't tame this thing. It's a waste of time. And I don't want that. And then at number 1 we got the Pego. Like, it's the Pego. Honestly, would you expect anything else to be in this spot? Like, what is going on? It's like a normal looking creature until you get to its face, and then that beak thing comes out of it, and it's like, no, I don't want this. Back away. This does not need to exist or be here. Why is it here? I don't, honestly, to this day, I don't know why it's there, but, you know, it is. It was probably on the creature that was discovered being the Pegomastax, but still. I can't get over the look of this creature, and the fact that it's also one of the most annoying in the game. Pretty much like the most annoying. Maybe the Ichthyornis is. Yeah, it has to be the Ichthyornis. Is more annoying than this because it's this, but it flies. Still, Pegos, man. I hate Pegos. What do you think of Pegos? Do you like Pegos or do you not like Pegos? What is your opinions on Pegos? Because I'm not really that fond on Pegos. But did you know that they can gather berries? Like, if you set them on wandering, if you tame one, which honestly you would have tamed on accident. No one tames these things on purpose. You just have berries in your last berries in the last slot of your hotbar at the right time. Pego tame, but they can gather berries for you. That's kind of nice, I guess. The most unusual Ark creatures. In at number 10 is the Astrocetus, and this is one of those creatures which on the surface may not seem that unusual, but I really can't think of any other game which has a creature like the Astrocetus. And also, this was a very new thing to Ark as well. No space things had been done in Ark, and the fact that with Gen 1 we had a space biome, and then we had this hunking beast of a creature, it is definitely an unusual Ark tame, as in it isn't like most of the other creatures in Ark. And there are only a couple of creatures which I can think of which are as unusual as this thing, and also at the same time follow the similar genre that this thing has of being a sea creature of sorts. The Astrodelphis obviously being a great example there, that meaning space dolphin instead of space whale, which is what Astrocetus means. Speaking of the Astrodelphis, next up is the Astrodelphis, and the only reason why I would say this is a little bit more unusual than the Astrocetus is its design is more unusual, and also its abilities are a lot more unusual than the Astrocetus. The Astrodelphis is essentially like a dart plane. This thing can just soar through the air and do so many acrobatics and shoot loads of lasers, and yes, it has technically been done before, but you wouldn't really expect it out of this creature, and its design and overall feel is very unusual, and I can't think of any Ark creature other than the Astrodelphis, of course, which controls like the Astrodelphis. And also, again, with the Astrocetus and Astrodelphis, it doesn't really make sense that they work outside of space, but they kind of have to. You know, it is the game of Ark, and there are many other maps, and there are many other biomes that aren't space biomes. So yeah, it just kind of breaks the immersion for me there. But you know, it's Ark, they're fantasy creatures. Who knows, maybe they can just dart around in non-space as well. Although they do make a lot more sense in space biomes. But obviously, for most of the time which you'll be using these things, you won't be using them in space biomes. You'll be using them to travel across the map, as both of them are great traveling mounts. The Astrodelphis being better for traveling, obviously, as it is a significantly faster creature, and also it's just a lot more fun to ride around on. Next up, we have the Bulldog, and this is strangely one of the cutest yet horrifying creatures that Ark has to offer, and obviously it debuted with Operation, and I'm pretty sure it hasn't appeared in any other map since, but be sure to correct me if I did get that wrong. And in terms of this thing's abilities, it is just a light pet like the Shinehorn and the Featherlight, which essentially will debuff things like Reapers and the Nameless. Not really useful on any other map, but they're definitely really cute, and the fact that there is a mask for the Bulldog, and you kind of put the Noglin in the same spot here, as they are similar creatures. They definitely are respected, but very unusual tames. Now, I don't know what it is, but the Managama always seems really weird to me. And the Managama just seems like a creature which doesn't seem like any other Ark creature which I can think of in any way, shape or form. This is essentially like a Ferox type thing with ice fists that can jump into the air and has some sort of elemental power, and that also has ice breath and can freeze creatures. This is definitely an oddity and an unusual tame which hasn't been revisited since. There is no other Ark creature to this day which is like the Managama, and also the spelling for it is pretty unusual as well. But once you learn how to spell it once, you kind of don't forget it, as its name is that unusual. And it definitely is an extremely useful creature. Obviously, as you can see, it can travel across the map with insane speeds, and it deals a pretty reasonable amount of damage as well, which you can't get out of every great traveling mount. But the Managama definitely is great for that. And like I said as well, it is great at freezing creatures, and in a moment you will see what it is like when it does freeze creatures. The only thing you really have to watch out for though is this thing is extremely buggy and will get stuck on things, and it just did get stuck on something there. In terms of it freezing, it will freeze creatures for a very, very long amount of time, which is why it is heavily used by PvP griefers. I've heard not as much anymore since they got nerfed, but they still get used a little bit in terms of PvP griefing still to this day. Now, the Rock Drake is pretty similar to the Managama in a lot of things, but I think it is slightly more unusual, partly because it did come first. Obviously, Arboration was the map that came up before Extinction, and also just the way that this creature is formed is a little bit more unusual. This is kind of like a somewhat T-Rexy chicken. I don't really know where those two creatures came from, but I would just call it kind of a T-Rexy, chickeny, turkey thing. I don't really know where I'm going with that. It is so unusual in the form that it is, you can't really relate it to other creatures, which is very, very weird, and definitely a sign which it is very unusual. But its taming method isn't particularly one of the most unusual, like you would expect from this creature. It is the exact same as the Wyvern. You simply steal the egg from the Rock Drake nest, and then boom, once you've obviously incubated and raised up that creature, you have yourself a Rock Drake. And also they do come in a lot of colours as well, this pink being an example, which is actually quite weird for a lot of Ark creatures, as most creatures do follow a similar colour pattern, whereas the Rock Drake has a wealth of colours. And I actually kind of really like the tealy blue more than the colour which I've got here. I like a tealy blue, like a bluey green is what I kind of like on a Wyvern. Not a Wyvern, this is a Rock Drake. Why am I talking about Wyverns? In terms of Rock Drake colour, that is my preference. What is your Rock Drake colour? Comment in the comments down below. Don't know why I said comment too many times in a sentence, but comment in the comments down below. What is your favourite Rock Drake colour? As I'd really like to know. Mine is definitely that kind of like bluey, greeny thing, but you know, some of you may be digging this pink and purple which we got here. No, it's not pink and purple, pink and blue. I may be slightly colourblind. In at number 5 is the gas bags, and this is just a creature which is such an oddity. And also, I'm seriously questioning wildcard here. How did they come up with the idea for this? Or did we come up with the idea for this? Honestly, I don't know, but somehow this thing was created, and it's been in the game since Extinction, and I don't really get how it came around or how the idea came for it. It's literally a farting gas animal which flies on its own gas. It's a very, very weird premise, but actually a very cool creature which doesn't require a saddle. The saddle's only there if you have friends, unlike me, because I don't really have friends that I play Ark with, or friends in general, you know, living that life. But that saddle is there if you do have friends, unlike any YouTuber which you can really think of. Us YouTubers, yeah, but we don't really get the friends. This is why we do YouTube, you know. But if you do have friends, then your friend can go on the saddle, and then you can travel together, which is nice, you know. The Diplodocus has a significantly higher passenger count, but that's not on the list because that isn't a very interesting or unusual creature. Anyway, I should stop talking about the Diplodocus. What's actually good about the gas bags? Well, on Extinction, this is actually one of the best creatures out there for gathering metal. Obviously, you still have the RG, and the gas bags is significantly harder to control than the RG. but it is a lot cuter, and it's just, I like using the creatures which came on that map, and I'll always try to use the gas bags, as long as I can control it at the time, to do some metal runs. And once you learn it, it is a really great creature for doing those metal runs, if you don't just get stuck in a trench with loads of wyverns and get killed a couple of times. That happened because I forgot to enable creative mode stupidly for this b-roll, but you know, editing, it looks like I did nothing wrong and I escaped perfectly, but there was multiple attempts in this, and then I flew too high and I got up caught into the world border. I am definitely not a great pilot of the gas bags. Also, if you find yourself like this, make sure to dismount just before you hit the ground, it will save you. Now, the Rhino Ganatha, I think, came from us. It was from some kind of creature voting thing anyway, and we did vote for this creature to be in the game, and it is one of the more unusual ones. There isn't any other Ark creature which is really like this thing. And also, I know loads of people are saying Rhino Ganathas are rare, and I get that they're rare. On ASA at the moment, I've seen about 5 Rhino Ganathas in the swamp biome. Is there an overspawn of Rhino Ganathas on ASA? Wildcard, can you tell me please, if you're watching this video, because I've had way too many encounters with this thing. I've seen 1 Giga, and I've seen 5 Rhino Ganathas, and these things are generally a lot rarer than a Giga, as they only spawn in one specific biome, whereas Gigas can spawn on several places around the map. In terms of the Rhino Ganatha's uses though, this thing is essentially just an upgraded Quetz, which is a lot faster and deals more damage. As unlike a Quetz, it will deal more damage. It is significantly harder to tame and uses the taming method, which the Reaper has, which I'll talk about because the Reaper is ahead on this list. Oh my god, spoilers. But either way, the Reaper is ahead on this list, so I'll talk about his taming method similarly there. But you can always check out my Rhino Ganatha taming guide if you want to know fully, in detail, how to tame this thing. And you'll see brief b-roll of me actually taming it, because this is from the guide video. I was just a little bit lazy at the time, and I was just like, I'll take my guide video and then I'll just chuck that into b-roll, which is obviously why you're seeing me tame it here, and you're not seeing me tame every other Ark creature in all of the other b-rolls. But it is a very long and arduous taming process, which is extremely difficult and requires 2 Rhino Ganathas, not 1. You're going to need 2 of those things, and you're going to need pheromone, you're going to need to kill 1, and then yeah, there's so much. Just check out the tutorial. I really shouldn't talk about it more. The Rhino Ganatha is just one of those creatures which is really unusual, and we voted for, and for some reason spawns way too much on ASA. Have no idea why, but it does. This is the Rhino Ganatha. It's one of Ark's most unusual tames. The spoiler is here, with the Reaper being in at number 3, and the Reaper is a even more unusual tame than the Rhino Ganatha, as obviously it came way before. The Rhino Ganatha is the most recent creature which has been added to Ark, apart from the Phasalosuchus. Don't know if that is in ASA at the moment, but I'm going to count that as the most recent Ark creature. Is that thing coming to Scorched Earth or the island? Either way, it might not be here yet, so don't take my word on that one. Not quite sure. That may be a Scorched Earth creature. Actually, thinking about it, that is a Scorched Earth creature. The Rhino Ganatha was one for the island. Yes, the Rhino Ganatha is the latest creature of Ark at the moment. And the Reaper has obviously been in Ark for ages. It came out in Operation. That was way back in 2017. And this thing was such an oddity at the time, but it really fits into that map, and its taming method is one of the most unusual in the game. Essentially what you do is you'll get a Reaper Queen to a really low amount of health. You can use a trap for this, it will make it so much easier, and you can use light pets as well. Not for the other bit of the taming method though, as that won't work with a light pet. You can't have a light pet when this thing impregnates you, when you go up to it after you put its health down. At least I'm pretty sure you can't. Don't anyway, as it may somewhat fail, as the Reapers really do not like light pets. But after you have been impregnated by the Reaper, obviously after you've damaged it and the impregnation has occurred, you just get a ton of XP, and then boom, you have yourself a Reaper. In at number 2 is the Bloodstalker, and this is just essentially a spider with, I don't think 8 eyes, but it may have 8 eyes, or it may have 12. Honestly, comment down below how many eyes the Bloodstalker has, as right now I don't know. I'm sure I could look up an image, but I know one of you out there knows the answer to this. Well, obviously you can tell why the Bloodstalker is so unusual. No other Ark creature is really like this, and you could say the Aranio is another kind of spidery thing, but that is just kind of like a normal spider. The Bloodstalker is like a vampire, blood-sucking Spider-Man thing with an obscene amount of eyes. It may be 8, it may be 12. I'm not quite sure. Make sure to let me know. I want to know how many eyes the Bloodstalker has, as I'm really not sure, as I have not seen one up close and personal for a while. But also, this thing's taming method is very much an oddity. Like no other Ark creature, apart from the Desmodus, obviously, off the top of my head, which I can think of, has the same taming method. You essentially get blood bags, which you will need to syringe out of your body, or you can obviously use the Desmodus to harvest them now, but originally you just had to use the blood syringe to get those, and then it will just eat those, and then you'll tame yourself a Bloodstalker, and you can feed it some creatures before to get 100% effectiveness. But honestly, I've never bothered with that, as I'm not going to do like insane things with this creature. Like I'm not going to fight bosses with the Bloodstalker. I just want a good one. And obviously for missions, you're not even going to need a Bloodstalker, but it is good to get one, obviously, so you can get to those missions, so you can get all of those hexagons. But before you get a Bloodstalker, you should definitely go to the Bogrish missions to practice. And finally, in at number 1 is the Velonosaur. And the reason why I have put this thing in at number 1 isn't because it has the weirdest taming method or anything along those lines. It is just, there has never been any kind of creature like the Velonosaur apart from the Velonosaur. I can think of no other Ark creature like this tame. And albeit, yes, it does have one of the simplest taming methods out of all of the creatures on the list. It is just a very simple knockout tame. No other Ark creature compares to this thing in terms of what it is. This thing, again, is just a moving turret, and there's no other creature which does this like the Velonosaur. And sadly, the damage of the turrets doesn't scale with melee, but obviously you can keep leveling up that stamina to shoot even more turrets out. And obviously I wouldn't recommend it in this close of a proximity, but it is definitely an extremely useful thing, which when you ride this thing you will use a lot. But it also just have your general just attack, hack and slash, and it also can shake spines off of it as well. And also I think when you look at it head on when it's shooting turrets, it's a little bit creepy. That animation just to me is a little bit on the creepy side.
Now, of course, we must shout out our patrons, Ekaterina Pechkova and Karina Thorne, who are our paid Patreon members at the moment. Thank you for all your support. I really appreciate everyone on this list. Everyone else is, of course, free members. Thanks for the support, though.